Hello to you, a warm welcome. This is World Business Report. I'm Ben Thompson, and we start this hour here in the UK, where the cost of borrowing is set to rise again. Within the next half hour, the Bank of England will likely increase interest rates by at least 0.25% as it tries to bring inflation under control. It would be the 14th rate rise in a row, of course, piling yet more pressure on many households and businesses. While the bank's main interest rate is already at 5%, that's the highest in about 15 years. Inflation is finally starting to ease, but consumer prices are still rising at nearly 8% a year. That is 4 times the bank's target. So that means it's got a tricky balancing act to perform, to rein in inflation without strangling the economy. So let's speak now to Dr. Steve Nolan, who's a senior lecturer in economics at Liverpool John Moores University. Thank you for being with us. And so we've not got long to wait. What are you expecting as far as rate rises are concerned?
I think obviously there will be a rate rise, and smart money is everyone's basically expecting about 0.25% from the bank today.
So the challenge that the bank has is that it's looking at what inflation has already done, and we know that interest rate rises take quite a while to filter through. Is there any danger here that rates go too high and therefore strangle the economic recovery?
Yeah, there's a risk. I mean, there's always a risk when putting interest rates up. It's a really hard job to do, to know that when you're kind of putting your foot on the accelerator, that it's going to do the right thing, because, as you say, there's lots of lags in how long it takes. In general, I get the sense from the Bank of England and the messaging they put across that they are slightly more concerned about doing nothing, the risk of doing nothing, than the risk of doing something and kind of over increasing interest rates. They feel that they can dial back on that a little bit more than letting inflation continue to persist. Obviously, the risk of that in the short term is there is quite a lot of pain for consumers and businesses within the economy.
Yeah, and I want to talk on that pain without dwelling on it too much, because we'll all know the effects of it. It makes borrowing more expensive, whether you're a homeowner or a business. But that's essentially what rising rates do. They are a tool to make us poorer, and like it or not, it stops us spending, and that, the theory would tell us, brings down inflation. But we know inflation, or so much of it, is being driven by factors outside of the UK.
Yeah, so, and a lot of that actually seems to be moving in the right direction. Things like food prices, energy prices, they've been coming down, and they're, to be fair, responsible for a lot of the large falls we saw, especially in the last monthly figures. What the Bank of England is interested in, focused on, is probably what you call domestic inflation, drivers of domestic inflation, the tightness of the labour market, the behaviour of wage growth, and the price of services. And in all 3 of those, since their last interest rate rise, there's been some positive news. Unemployment is slightly up. I know it sounds terrible to say that's positive news, but it means that the labour market's slightly less tight, which means that there's less pressure on putting wages up, which can ultimately feed into prices. So in that respect, domestically, there is some good news going on.
Yeah, and Steve, why are we in the UK such an outlier right now? We know inflation is coming down more quickly elsewhere. Other central banks are in a position where they can start cutting rates already. We're still talking about them going up.
Well, partly that is, a lot of it is to do with the labour market, and in a large part is because of economic inactivity. We saw a large rise in the number of people who just basically not involved with the labour market following the pandemic. That's gone down a little bit. It's at the lowest point since it was just in the spring of 2020. So hopefully there's some sign of doing that there. And, you know, the B word probably has something to do with it. There's a friction in how we trade and how we allow people to come in here and work. That will have some implications for how well our labour market is working, and ultimately how much we have to pay people.
Steve, really good to have you with us. Thank you for that. That's Dr. Steve Nolan there, senior lecturer in economics at Liverpool John Moores University. Thank you.